and welcome to Insights with me, Lynne O'Donnell. I'm joined by Waliullah Rahmani, a media entrepreneur with around 2 decades of activity in press freedom, human rights and strategic studies. He was the director of the Kabul Centre for Strategic Studies and Kabanarma Media before the Taliban's return and remains active in press freedom issues. He talks with me about the transformation of Afghanistan into an ideology-driven surveillance state controlled by the Taliban's intelligence agency and his belief that things will only get worse. Have a listen. Waliullah, thank you so much for being with us today. It's a real privilege. Can you start our conversation by introducing yourself and describe what you did in Kabul before the collapse of the Republic?
Yeah, Lynn, it's amazing to talk again. Of course, in Kabul, days before collapse, we had long hour discussions about the future of the country.
Yep.
No one really expected that Afghanistan, after all those efforts, would fall this quick, and that was so unprecedented. It was so unbelievable. Yeah, before the fall of Afghanistan, like hundreds of thousands and millions of Afghans hopeful for the future of the country, I was there and I was trying to be part of the younger generation of Afghans who were the hope of the country and were making impacts in different fields. So I worked as a journalist, and at the same time as a researcher. I led a think tank in Afghanistan called Center for Strategic Studies for 7-8 years, and worked on radical Islamic movements, terrorism, insurgency in the country. And then I also established one of the first digital media outlets in the country with the hope of being part of the much vibrant media ecosystem that was created. And the influential wave of social media centered technology and innovation that was quite visible across Afghanistan. So up to the fall of Kabul, I was leading a team of journalists and media workers, and we were producing news, investigative reports, documentaries, and were part of the media ecosystem that was really making an impact on Afghanistan. But with the collapse of Afghanistan, things of course changed.
Well, yes, indeed. But you're still very busy. The newsletter that you just referred to was called Reporterly. As I recall, you had a lot of subscribers because it was a very comprehensive daily roundup of what was going on in the country. You still produce that daily newsletter. Now it's called Brevity. I would imagine that there are fewer people subscribing to it. What or who is the audience for your newsletter now? And I ask that because recently one of the editors of a magazine that I was working for many years told me that no one's interested, he said, in Afghanistan and Pakistan. But I don't believe that is the case. Are you finding that? Is your newsletter finding an audience, a new audience?
Well, actually, I think Afghanistan still matters because geostrategically Afghanistan is a country that neither regional players nor international players can ignore it. But at the same time, what I was always mentioning, the spring of Afghanistan is over. The decades, 2 decades of opportunities that Afghanistan had is over, unfortunately. And then it's now a new era for the country, and everyone, like as you mentioned, there are different narratives, about the country. But according to my personal experience, while we still produce that unique product, that you mentioned, we see that the people who are interested in the country are somehow the same, but in a more congested manner. I can see that previously, before the fall of Afghanistan, there were different actors who were interested to understand what is going on in Afghanistan. But now it's more limited to, I think, bigger players internationally in states that are that either see themselves, interested and obliged to address the humanitarian situation in Afghanistan, or at the same time feel that Afghanistan remains a geography that could once again emerge as a hub that could threaten international security. So that's why they remain focused on Afghanistan. But unfortunately, what I see is that people have been so optimistic in the past 3 years. In my personal discussions with various like people who have been engaged in Afghanistan in different capacities, I could see a very, I can say, a very high optimism about the changed Taliban in Afghanistan. That's now a safe geography, and many such illusions that now has faded. 3 years later, with the emergence of Taliban, and what we continue to do is in that personal small capacity is to reflect the realities on the ground, and to say that Afghanistan is not what it is portrayed and what you want it to believe to be, but it is unfortunately an Afghanistan that does not have a responsible actor who either understand and feel responsible to the global order. It does not have really a constitutional order in place. There is a group, a bunch of brutal, I can say, criminals who have taken over the geography, and now they portray that they want to be a state, they want to be a legitimate actor, but inside the country they are not, and that's why we continue to address these issues, try to report on them, and be part of, like, I do not feel that living in exile is something that has given me the content, to stay idle, because Afghanistan is in every day of my life, and I continue to believe that we should make an impact, although we are in exile. But and we have to return to the country, and Afghanistan's future and destiny should change once and for all. So I do believe that the interests have diminished, but at the same time, I think different actors continue to remain worried. And now fortunately, I see that that 3 years trend of absolute optimism about the future of the country is changing, and that's the good sign.
Yes, it is a good sign indeed. Let's concentrate on your expertise in the media. You've also been working with an international organisation that monitors abuse of journalists worldwide, concentrating largely on what's been happening in Afghanistan, though Pakistan as well. Can you describe the situation for journalists in Afghanistan now?
Well, yeah, I'm connected to Afghanistan journalist community and journalism community on a daily basis, and unfortunately, the picture is very grim. The picture continues to be grimmer, and the trends in both in terms of journalist security, safety, the space for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, the entire free media ecosystem is diminishing every day, passing. I see that every day there is a journalist or a couple of journalists who flee Afghanistan to the region without understanding what will be their destiny and future and fate. And there are active journalists, mostly who are working for one of these media outlets who have remained in Afghanistan and continue to operate. But I have heard and I continue to hear stories of horror of the Taliban against these journalists, because every report that they produce, and those reports either get published or get broadcasted, Taliban just react to them, and then they come after these journalists. And unfortunately, the current trend is that Taliban have been able to put an absolute control on the media ecosystem, that most of these cases of abuses, of repression against journalists never get reported. And that's why they remain silent, and the journalists flee the country, and they try to seek safety in a third country. When they flee Afghanistan, they face a lot of other horror in the regional countries because of all the hostilities that are there against Afghans and Afghan migrants. So in general, the situation is for the freedom of press is quite diminishing. Taliban is re-engineering. There is a social re-engineering of Afghanistan that has been underway. You could see in establishment of thousands of madrasas, in different fields, and the same is with the media. I think the media ecosystem in Afghanistan, the first phase was to build an absolute control by the Taliban, and they did it, and they did it through their intelligence agencies, and now they think that this absolute control is there, so they started the so-called reform of these media. So if you remember, just a couple of weeks back, the Taliban's one of the Taliban officials from their notorious Ministry of Propagation of Virtue and Prevention of Vice said that 90% of Afghanistan media are now reformed. So that says a lot about how the situation of media outlets are inside the country. And then when it comes to how on a daily basis, journalists operate, of course, they don't have access to information, and if they have access to information, that's very limited. And then every day passing, there are different decrees that come against the media, and then like diminishing that remaining free space for the media outlets in the country. So my personal experience is that I don't think that based on the standards of free press, are not ones that are in liberal democracies, but even like in the so-called democratic states, I don't think 10% of that free space for professional journalism in Afghanistan has been kept under the Taliban, and that's why while I remain hopeful that those media that are active inside the country should operate and should continue, but the way things are developing, I think the Taliban just their ideology will not let them to leave and to allow any media outlet operate in the country, because in their law of virtue and vice law that's passed recently, they say that living beings should not be recorded or filmed. So it means that neither human being nor animals should not, and that they should not be recorded. So that's already implemented. For example, in Kandahar, they don't allow any recording of living being. We had an incident in Takhar province just last week that Taliban had not let any recording of their conferences. So I think they will implement this across Afghanistan. I hope they should not, but this is a trend, and that's why I think the situation is very much worse than many expected, and than what we believe.
Yeah, indeed. It's first they came for the journalists, and nobody knows what happened after that, because there's no holding to account. I find it very interesting that, well, number one, I think if a decision is made about how the media functions and it applies to Kandahar, that's just step one. It will roll out over the rest of the country. So it's getting darker and darker. I don't really know what anybody would have expected. I remember in the weeks before the fall of Kabul, journalists had been flooding into the capital from areas that were falling to Taliban control, because one of the first things that they did in taking over provincial capitals and districts was close down media and harass and arrest journalists. So there were a lot in Kabul before the end of the Republic era, and they were, you could talk to them and find out exactly what was happening. So there should be no surprises, I would suggest, in the way things have rolled out. But where would you compare it to? I guess total control, as in Iran and China. They're getting some good advice on how to repress and control the flow of information.
Well, I think we will see a much worse scenario in Afghanistan, because even in China and in Iran, there is some kind of rule of law, that they believe in. In Afghanistan, what the Taliban lack is that their ideology did not let them to believe in any kind of law. For them, law means those their interpretation of hadith from Quran, and all of those interpretations are not like the real interpretation, like the interpretation of a modern educated Muslim. They are a bunch of tribal, illiterate, fanatic people who have studied the basics of Islam, and their understanding is based on those religious, the tribal, like traditions, and that's why in their ideology they try to live in Afghanistan as people had lived in the Stone Age, So that's why, if they come to pass a law, and their first law ratified by their so-called supreme leader is that, the living being should not be recorded, filmed, that tells the entire story that where we are heading, we're not heading towards, a reformed media, we're not heading towards, keeping, reporting about things that they want. We're heading towards a situation where they don't want to be recorded at all, so according to their beliefs, it's haram, it's forbidden to record, and film a human being and then broadcast it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that they have a very black and white approach to everything. So if you report on something, and then if people criticize them, so there's a right to comment for them, but okay, one of their officials come and say, okay, no, it's not, but then criticism for the Taliban means that it is an animosity, and it's and animosity means that, the enemy should not leave, should be treated, should be imprisoned, should not have the space to breathe, and then that's why, in every small and big issue, it's not the functioning system of a state that acts. For example, it's not their Ministry of Information and Culture that should act, it's their intelligence agency that comes in, it's their intelligence operatives that come in. While they have kept the entire, I can say, bureaucracy and structures of the government of Afghanistan that was established in the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, they have kept all of those structures. Like they have installed every person like in different positions. But in practice, none of those like in it, the functioning part of that bureaucracy are a couple of institutions, and at the heart of all those institutions is their intelligence agency. So if you look at every aspect of Afghan lives, it's an intelligence operatives that decide how things should go on. Particularly in the media sector. So my understanding is that Taliban will not, I think, understand or see a limit when it comes to restricting and controlling the media ecosystem in Afghanistan. Look at what they did to Afghanistan International, for example.
Yeah,
we saw, we heard the news just a couple of weeks back that they were able to acquire the technology to censor Afghanistan International and jam the satellite broadcast of that TV station. So it's not only their human capital that through their intelligence agency or through their security agencies that they have like put in place to control the media, but they also have gone after acquiring sophisticated technology to surveillance regime to start and operate a surveillance state. And then to control, what Afghans should consume. It should not be very shocking to see that, for example, tomorrow they will go against, all these satellite dishes that people have on their rooftops, or many more things, So I think they are ready to go as far as it takes, that it meets their ideology.
I think a lot of people don't really understand that it is ideologically driven. So there is no persuading the regime into reform or into easing up, or this is ideological, and so it is inarguable. I don't think a lot of people get that, and the import of technologies, the surveillance technology from China, is clearly a quid pro quo for access to whatever it is the Chinese want access to, Belt and Road, transportation links and mining, minerals, etc. So that's all playing into the ideological impetus behind the regime. The darker, the better, because there is no accountability. It's all right. We're always right. So where's the argument? But if we can just get back to the comparison, as a media entrepreneur, you were very aware of the development of the media landscape during the 20 years of the Western-backed republic. That light has gone out. Do you see that Afghanistan was developing a free pluralistic media sector that stood to hold power to account? I mean, it was very flawed in its own way, but it was still developing, was it not? It was a point of light in a very dark region.
Well, definitely. I think if you compare 1990s to what happened from 2001 onwards to 2021, it's completely incomparable. It's something that showed 100% transformation of the country for the better. I think I compare Afghanistan in terms of freedom of speech and development of the media sector during the Republic era of Afghanistan with the country, with Afghanistan. Of course, not with, for example, established liberal democracy, But if from that perspective, if you look, Afghanistan was very vibrant. The media ecosystem was changing everything quite tremendously. It was flawed in many cases. Our journalists, we were not professionals. We were learning everything, on our own, and then we were learning through experiences, through mistakes, through errors. But at the same time, it was quite fascinating to see that we could criticize everyone, and then the media could take the most powerful actors into account. Although Afghanistan's, I have a lot of questions about the framework and the formation of the constitutional order in Afghanistan, particularly the centrality and centralization of power at the hand of one person, who was called the president. Yeah. And the president had all the authority and all the access and all the power to control and manage everyone. But at the same time, those presidents were taken into account even by the free media. There were two things that you should consider when talking about the republic and the vibrant media ecosystem. One was that the constitutional order had allowed Afghanistan and the independent and free media to grow and nurture. That's the first thing. And the second thing was that there was international funding and international communities' political will, to support this independent media, as one of the pillars of their achievements in building a new Afghanistan. So we in comparison to the funding, of course, there could have been a lot more opportunity, and we could have utilized much more. But at the same time, when you see and when you look into that past 20 years, the media ecosystem was quite vibrant. It was quite flourishing, and there were many journalists who would work every day in very small instances of abuse, of corruption, and many more issues, criminality, insurgency, terrorism, were reported by the domestic media, and people had access to information. But to be honest, if we see that in the past 3 years, part of that media ecosystem still remains in the country, and Taliban have not been able to shut down, it's because of that 20 years of investment. So yeah, I think in the recent history of Afghanistan, modern history of Afghanistan, I think that the Republic order and the 2 decades of the media ecosystem that was established was unprecedented, and I think in the short term it will not be repeated in the history of Afghanistan.
Yes, I agree. It's very difficult to go back to that, I would imagine. But as things developed, I thought that the development of media was very interesting to observe, because it took a little while for vested interests and powerful figures to understand what media freedom meant. And after a few years of, being held to account, being exposed by proper investigative reporting, then the threats started to come in. The manipulation began. And I also noticed that it became easier for TV stations, for instance, to put a camera and a reporter at an attack site, a bomb site, a siege site, and that sort of like talking head stuff replaced to a great extent the more aggressive investigative reporting that had preceded it. And I thought that was a great loss. I saw that Tolo, which was the most popular television broadcaster in the country, really did start that cheap TV coverage. It's easy and cheap to have a guy stand in front of a blast site rather than look into the finances and the corruption and everything that really, in the long run, blighted the existence of the Republic. I mean, journalism suffers when profit becomes the motivation, doesn't it?
That's absolutely true. I think like when you look into media activities and particularly reporting, and I think there are a lot of standards that one has to consider. For example, safety of the crew, those people who report, is the first priority and should be. Such instances, when I'm looking now into the broader region, South Asia, unfortunately, you don't have this culture among the media entrepreneurs in general. For example, in Pakistan, if you look, the same has happened. There's not really much consideration about the safety of journalists. First thing is how to report. You should be the first to report. And like these are the basic responsibilities, the principal responsibilities of media outlets that have to consider. Unfortunately, in Afghanistan, we saw all those flaws. For example, but technically, it was like something that maybe I think. My understanding was that, everyone was trying to be the first one to report on something, while the situation was going in a way that, maybe, going live everything, all those horror, those stories, were not in the broader interest of, of Afghanistan, the Afghanistan that we wanted to survive. And I think one of the issues we would see that, okay, for hours, for example, if there was a Taliban terrorist attack in one part of the city, for hours, there were live reporting from the scene, which was the right of people to have access to such reporting. But, with the fragility of the situation, how much all those, I think, all those horror psychological, would contribute to psychological warfare that, the enemy would waged, against Afghanistan. That from different perspective, I think the Afghan media ecosystem, had the flaws. We had errors, we had mistakes, and then the expectation was that some of these like the media, the major influential media outlets would not tolerate an order, a regime like the Taliban, but then we saw that these media outlets remained in the country, and unfortunately I see that those media outlets that remained in the country, they faced even those who were so sympathetic to the Taliban, like Hikmatyar's Bariat TV, Taliban shut down them, and they stopped their operation. With that experience in mind, I hope that we should not see this trend to continue to other influential media outlets. With all the control that the Taliban have put in place, maybe as I mentioned before, they will not be satisfied, with these media outlets to operate, and then they will come after them, one day. So my point is that I hope that the Taliban would be able to either set themselves accountable to the international order, or they should be taken accountable. Because they are the reality of Afghanistan. Of course, we cannot eliminate them, but at the same time, they are part of the reality of the country. They are not the absolute reality, all of the realities, and if Afghanistan should remain, that should remain, and if there has to be, a stable Afghanistan, it's an Afghanistan that everyone should find themselves in, and have to be able to express their opinions and to live in that country freely, and with dignity and equal rights. And what the Taliban have shown, they don't believe in any of these terms, So that's why, I think they might be in control right now, in these media outlets, in the ecosystem might operate for now, but I don't think there is a future for them with what they are doing, and there should not be a future for them, of course.
Well, indeed. But, the Minister of Information and Culture, Waliullah Rahmani, I'm not very good at pronouncing his name. He's been blacklisted as a terrorist by the United Nations Security Council's Sanctions Committee since 2001. Yet now, through a long association with the Taliban in various roles that he has held, including provincial governor and spokesman, etc., now he's essentially running the media landscape of the country, and he's very tightly controlling, as you've said, broadcasting and publishing. If any media outlet, for instance, Tolo TV, which was the most successful and is now effectively a mouthpiece for the Taliban, is cooperating with the ministry, and its owners are effectively working with and at the behest of a sanctioned terrorist, aren't they becoming endangering themselves for international sanction? I mean, what should be the consequences of that? Tolo, for instance, and other media outlets, TV1, any other that you care to mention, were funded by the international community, mostly the United States, which spent $1 billion on media development. So, that money is now, that investment is now working for sanctioned terrorists. What should be the consequences of this, do you think?
Well, actually, let me take this one step ahead. It's not only the Ministry of Information and Culture of the Taliban. It's one of the basic tools of control, and repression. According to my studies of the 3 years of the rule of this group on Afghanistan, the Taliban, they try to portray that, okay, Ministry of Information and Culture is in charge. They try to say that, okay, if there is a decision to impose a ban, it's the Ministry of Information and Culture. It's the so-called commission of the violation of media errors or something, So they try to portray this, but unfortunately, it's not the Ministry of Information and Culture that's in charge. They are there; they are the front face, but it is their security agencies, particularly their intelligence agency. I've heard from journalists who have, for example, worked in the country and tried to renew their media license or something, and they say that, okay, once the documentation just goes to the Ministry of Information and Culture, the ministry just sends it to the Taliban intelligence agency, and there is where the entire story happens. They get summoned to the Taliban intelligence agency, then they get questioned, their loyalty gets checked, and then it takes months and months for them to go there and to be monitored, to be surveilled. Their content is assessed, and then afterwards, after signing a lot of letters of pledge of allegiance to the emirate, to the Taliban group, they are able to renew their license. Once the Taliban intelligence agency approves, then the Ministry of Information Culture that signs and gives them that piece of paper as the license. And then so that's one thing. The second thing is that if you are a journalist and you want to report on something, then you have to either take a letter that you're allowed to report from the Ministry of Interior or the intelligence agency, and then you have to be referred to that provincial directorate, and then to the district directorate, and then to that specific area officer, and then they check that letter, and then they check that, okay, you're allowed, and then that's when you can record something. So if you look at the surveillance state, it's not very simple, that we imagine, and then that's why I'm saying that the entire story is very deeper than what we think and we can imagine that's happening inside Afghanistan. I think these actors, these media outlets that operate inside the country, okay, these are independent, actors, and as I mentioned before, my personal expectation was that everyone who have worked during the Republic Order in Afghanistan, they would just have a very black and white approach towards the Taliban, and for them there will not be a gray area. Either you operate as democratic Afghans, and then you don't accept the Taliban, or there's not there should not be another. I think another side to this, but then, okay, they've chosen to stay in Afghanistan for those reasons. What I currently hope, all of these, we as actors, different actors, being and choosing to stay there, I think portrayed the country that, okay, Taliban is a changed group, you can stay there, they work, they are much more human now, they accept freedom of speech and all that. And unfortunately, that those narratives, created a broader narrative that everyone believed, in the international community as well, that, okay, let's be optimistic, let's give time, Taliban are changed. So 3 years are now wasted in Afghanistan, and they're not changed, in everyday passing, you see that journalists are just flee the country because they don't have any sort of protection, and then they live in limbo for months and years, until some of them who are lucky get passed to safety to a third country. And it's a repeated story, and it means that journalists cannot survive. In these some of these media outlets, they just hire new journalists. Those journalists come, get trained, and then they flee the country after a while because they cannot stay. So this is not a story, to be honest, to be hopeful about. And that's why I don't know what's the calculus, really the strategic calculus of all these media entrepreneurs. Be like for choosing to stay in the country, but what I understand is that whoever, like the entire media ecosystem in Afghanistan, they have to be part of the story and the reason for good of the country, and I think if that's the case, then there should be some red lines, for everyone. Including these major actors that you mentioned. So for me, I think like as I mentioned, I feel like the way things are shaping for the media and the way like Taliban are have worked, and have approached the media in Afghanistan. I don't see any hope, that, okay, you will see a different approach, you will see a different law, you will see a different, different actors, set of actors against the media in the country. No, I think we will see more stories of horror, and that's unfortunately that's the reality. And if we just be optimists, I think that's an optimism that go nowhere.
Yeah, that's a very sad statement to make. Optimism goes nowhere. But how much worse can it get?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, there's no limit for them.
Yeah.
I wish there was some limit. I wish they were a changed group. I wish they believed in inclusiveness in the country. I wish they believed that, okay, Afghanistan, like all other countries, should be treated equally. But what they have done is proves that that they are not. Look at what they have done to women in Afghanistan. Look what they have done to like ethnic minorities in the country. Look what they have done to ethnic religious minorities in Afghanistan. So and the same they have done to media. We have a lot of documentation in the country that how media is deteriorating. So I don't think there will be a limit for them. I think the limit is that either they will shut down the entire media ecosystem as they had done it in 1990s, or they have to go. Or the third point is that they have to come to an understanding that no, the way they have ruled Afghanistan is not pragmatic. and they will not survive like this, and that's how they when they come to an understanding that they should change. So I don't see any other options. I don't see any other scenario to the country. I wish I could have been more optimistic about Afghanistan. I wish, and because I want that country to be stable, I want that country to be free, I want that country to be peaceful, and I want that country to be a home for us, everyone who have lived there, with hope, with dignity, with pride. I wish all of those things were there. That today we would not talk about these dark, grim realities. And if we don't talk, I think with an optimism we cannot reach anywhere. So that's why. Well, there's no limit from the Taliban. If people still continues to be to remain optimistic, they will receive more shocks. With every new step that Taliban will take to retaliate against the media, to repress the media, and to put more repression and limitations on the media. From print to digital to social media and to the broadcast media.
Well, indeed. And what you're talking about is a state that is inevitably unsustainable. But the state capture by a disinterested, ideologically bound criminal enterprise is one that doesn't notice collapse is coming until collapse is here. So do you envisage a sudden collapse, a civil war, an intra-Taliban fight that descends into a nationwide civil war? What is the ultimate scenario? I know we can't predict how many days are left, but we know the days are numbered. The question is how many. But what is your prediction when we get to the end of that phase, of that number, when we reach that number?
Well, I think I think the way Taliban are acting, they just don't let people to breathe, and it's not limited to one sector. It's covering the entire country. Every sector, every province, every actor, every person. So that's how they will develop, and they will number their days, automatically. But it's quite, I don't think we will see a quite fast pace of collapse of the group, because at the end of the day, ideologically they are connected to each other. I don't see a fragmentation of the Taliban will happen, but what I see as a trend, as many trends that are emerging, is that people will not have any other option but to rebel against this group, because the other option would be either to die under their torture, or to live in fear and die. So this is the entire situation. Economically, the situation of the country is quite worse. People are poorer and poorer every day. The ethnic divide is quite emerging much higher, even within their own ranks. That's something that's getting reported. Corruption is quite high among them. There is a huge double standard in dealing and in implementing Sharia on their rank and file and the ordinary people of Afghanistan. And then they are going after everyone, so there is no tolerance. And I told you, even if you talk something that they think it's criticism, they don't take it as criticism. They take it as animosity, and they can call you enemy, and then they go after you as an enemy. So you see that's why you have the armed resistance that's now taking quite momentum in the country. You see that Afghans in exile, they come together, and various processes have reshaped. And you see that people who were in shock for 3 years, shock of collapse, and the trauma that they were going through, they're just like getting out those shocks, and they're returning and they're re-emerging. So all of them showed that, okay, if they don't change themselves, that I don't see they will. As you mentioned, their days are numbered. Okay, will it be quick? I don't think, but it will take some time. Unfortunately, that the country will just slide back, and then they don't understand any other language but the language of force, unfortunately. Yeah. So I hope before the country unfortunately will head to a civil war, Taliban should not lose this opportunity, and then come to say that, okay, they are part of reality, and then Afghanistan is a diverse country of ethnicities, sects, and political interests and thoughts and all, and then get the country back together. And they will not do that. So the other reality is that people just will stand against them. But I'm telling you, I still hope that we will not go to a civil war, but that's inevitable, with what the Taliban have been doing the past 3 years.
Well, I think that's a note to end on. Optimism is pointless. Collapse is inevitable. Sorry to say, a lot of people would agree with you. But Waliullah Rahmani, I'm very, very grateful to you for your time today and your expert analysis of what the situation is for media and overall in Afghanistan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynne. Indeed, my pleasure.
That was Waliullah Rahmani, a media entrepreneur now living in exile. He keeps a keen eye on the media in Afghanistan and has monitored the Taliban's tightening control of the flow of information and its transformation of the country into a repressive surveillance state. He's no optimist and says that things can only get a lot worse. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. That's all for now. I'm Lynne O'Donnell. Bye-bye.